Welcome to a new episode of Cheaters Always Cheat. Like, subscribe, and share to stay connected.
Can you believe it all started with a clogged toilet? We've been living in this house for 5 years without any plumbing problems, but suddenly, about 4 months ago, the toilet in our master bedroom started clogging up. It got so bad that we had to start using the toilet in our children's bedroom. Hey, I'm a 35-year-old guy, and my wife is 34. We have 3 kids, and my wife stays at home to take care of them. My wife kept pushing me to hire a plumber, but I kept putting it off because I wanted to fix it myself on the weekend. I had some plumbing experience from doing it in the past. One Saturday, I finally had the time to go to Home Depot and buy a drain auger. I thought I could solve the problem, but after 2 days, the toilet started clogging again. My wife got fed up with not being able to use our bedroom's bathroom and got angry at me, demanding that I call a plumber. She was tired of using our kids' bathroom. That's when I decided to call the plumber I usually hire for my rental properties when I have plumbing issues. On the day the plumber came to the house, my wife was visiting her mom, and she was planning to stay there with the kids until the evening. So, I took the opportunity to have the plumber come over and fix the clog without any interruptions. I wanted to surprise my wife because lately I've been trying my best to make her happy. She's been moody and short-tempered for the past few months, and I wanted to do something nice for her. We've got a keyless entry door, so I remotely let the plumber in, using my phone to unlock the door. He called me a few hours later to inform me that he discovered some clogging in my sewer pipe caused by rubber that got stuck at the intersection of pipes or any other obstacles in the pipe. I didn't believe him until he showed me footage from a drain pipe camera. I still had my doubts because the footage wasn't very clear to me. It seemed unbelievable because I haven't used rubber in a long time, not since my college days when I was fooling around with my now wife. After we had our 3rd child, I decided to get a vasectomy. When my wife returned home that day, it was already late, and I wanted to go to bed early because I had a work presentation the next day. My wife brought some food for me and our neighbor and his 2 kids. I thought it would lighten the mood to talk about what the plumber found that was causing the sewer clog. We shared a similar sense of humor, so I expected her to burst into laughter. However, when I told her that the plumber found used rubber protection in the toilet, her reaction wasn't what I had anticipated. She tensed up a bit, and her face turned red. It was a completely unexpected response. I'm familiar with her behavior, and her reaction seemed off to me. I've seen that kind of reaction before, and I know my wife well enough to sense that something wasn't right. She immediately tried to steer the conversation in a different direction. At first, I didn't know how to interpret her reaction. I thought maybe it was just one of her mood swings. She's been moody for the past 4 months, and I couldn't figure out why. I've been doing everything I can to make her happy, but it feels like I'm constantly tiptoeing around. My wife is a stay-at-home mom, and now that our 3 kids are in school, she was looking for something to keep herself occupied. I assumed that it might be one of the reasons for her mood swings, and sure enough, she was diagnosed with depression. She had been considering rejoining the workforce about a year ago because she was feeling down, and we thought it was because our kids were growing older and she wanted something to do. But 6 months later, she completely changed her mind and decided against it. Interestingly, around the time she changed her mind about working, I noticed that our bed life started to decline. She started behaving differently, focusing more on household chores, frequently changing the sheets, and becoming less engaged. She also reduced her visits to friends and family. The only time she leaves the house now is for shopping or going to the gym, and she has lost around 30 pounds during this period. During that time, her choice of clothing also underwent a significant change. She began wearing lingerie, short shorts, and on several occasions, she wouldn't wear underwear outside the house, especially when visiting the neighbors. Now it all makes sense to me. Looking back, I realized she was seducing the neighbor, and that's when the affair started. But at that time, I had no clue. After the plumbing incident, I didn't know how to interpret her reaction, so I made a mental note to start keeping a closer eye on her. Once I started suspecting that something was going on, I began noticing things that I wouldn't have suspected before. When we moved into my house 5 years ago, it was a brand new house in a new neighborhood. A year later, our neighbor, whom we'll call Cody, moved in. Cody came with his soon-to-be ex-wife and 2 children, a 19-year-old boy and a 17-year-old girl. Cody was 42 years old, 7 years older than me, and we shared a common hobby, so we got along well. We would hang out all the time, and my wife and I became close to Cody, his soon-to-be ex-wife, and their children. Cody had a pool table, and I would go over to his house to smoke cigars, have drinks, and play pool together. About 2 months after Cody moved in, we realized that his marriage was falling apart, and his wife wanted a divorce. He tried to reconcile, but it turned out that his wife was already having an affair with someone from her job. Cody and his children took it really hard, feeling abandoned by his wife. My wife and I did our best to support them, but little did I know that my wife went above and beyond to cheer them up. She started cooking more food than we needed so she could share it with Cody and his 2 children. His son also started going to the local community college, so he would come back and spend hours at my house tutoring my kids. He's a nice kid, and we became really close, almost like they lost their wife and mother and gained me, my wife, and our 3 kids. After Cody's wife moved out and started living with the other man, that's when my wife started to change, and I blame myself for not suspecting anything. Looking back, it was obvious. One time we were planning to visit Cody's house, and my wife wore a shorter skirt than usual, and I noticed she wasn't wearing anything underneath. I wanted to say something about it, but it slipped my mind at the time. When we got back home, I remembered and asked her why, but she was dismissive, saying she forgot. I'll never forget that day because her response didn't feel right to me. I didn't suspect anything between her and Cody because I was with Cody the whole time. I should also mention that it was her idea to cook extra food for them occasionally. I thought it would be temporary, but my wife continued doing it until D-Day. Another reason why I didn't suspect anything was because Cody worked long hours, at least 12 hours a day, and was out of the house for around 15 hours. Our schedules were pretty much opposite. I left for work at the same time as him, and he came back a couple of hours after me. We only really saw each other in the evenings when we were on our porch drinking and on weekends. Now, let's go back to the day the plumber found the rubber clogging our drain pipe and my wife's strange reaction. A few days later, I had a dream that she was having an affair. I couldn't recall who it was with, but the feeling of her having an affair lingered when I woke up. Since our 3rd child was born, she became a stay-at-home mom, though she did have some online gigs to earn some extra money. I was the main provider for our family. I never really bothered about what she did when she was alone at home while the kids were at school. But after the clogged toilet incident and the dream, things changed. It's like the universe was trying to draw my attention to something. My mind started going through a list of people she could potentially be having an affair with, maybe someone from her yoga or gym class. She didn't used to be into fitness, but now she goes all the time. Still, I couldn't figure out who her affair partner could be. I even followed her to the gym, but I didn't suspect anyone. Cody didn't have the time to go to the gym or do anything else besides work. Sometimes, she would go to the gym with Cody's 19-year-old son and 16-year-old daughter, so I figured she wouldn't have an affair or meet up with someone when she was with them. At that time, my mindset was focused on the fact that the protection rubber was found in my toilet, so I thought she must have invited the person into our bedroom. The thought of that made me sick to my stomach, and I tried to dismiss it. Looking back, I should have installed cameras in our bedroom or around the house, but it never occurred to me until later. 2 months after the incident, I started noticing that my wife and I were growing more distant each week. We would go without being close for a whole week, and whenever I tried to initiate, she would say she was always tired. Tired of what? Being home all day? Then she began blaming me for gaining weight. She wanted me to start working out and get in shape to be more attractive. She complained that I should stop drinking and start exercising. I took her words seriously because I was desperate to find a way to fix our relationship. I thought maybe the reason we were drifting apart was because she was working out and losing weight while I was going in the opposite direction. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I felt like she was right. So, I decided to cut down on my drinking and started doing morning workouts like push-ups before taking a shower for work. One day, after waking up early as usual, instead of heading to the spare bedroom, I did some push-ups next to my bed. While doing the exercise, I noticed something shiny and plastic underneath the bed. The room was still dark, with the door slightly open, allowing the light from the hallway to shine in. After finishing my push-ups, I reached out to grab what I initially thought was a piece of trash, or wrapper under the bed, intending to throw it away. But when I picked it up, I realized it was a protection wrapper. That's when it became clear to me what was going on. My wife was bringing another man into our bedroom and had closeness with him. I glanced at my wife still asleep in bed. Feeling angry and wanting to investigate further, I walked into the hallway where I saw a clear Trojan protection wrapper. I was furious because I knew what that meant. I wanted to confront her and demand answers about how and why the plumber found so many used protection in our drain, and now there was a wrapper under our bed. I felt a mix of anger, emasculation, and fear. Fear for my future, fear of what I would discover, and fear of the woman I had loved for almost half of my life. I felt like I had no other choice but to order a hidden camera and install it in our bedroom and living room. After setting up the camera and connecting it to my Wi-Fi, I went to work the next day. When I arrived at the parking lot, I decided to check the live feed on my phone because I had been thinking about it. To my surprise, I saw my wife had closeness with someone on our bed. It hadn't even been 40 minutes since I left home, and she had already brought someone into our house and started being close with them on our bed. I watched it unfold on my phone. Even though the room was dark, I could make out their movements, and I knew exactly who it was. It was my neighbor's 19-year-old son. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Without hesitation, I quickly reversed my car and drove back home, hoping to catch them in the act. As I arrived on my street, I parked my car on the street to avoid making any noise in the driveway, and I quietly opened the front door. Slowly and cautiously, I walked towards the bedroom and found both of them sleeping on our bed. There were 2 unused protection on the nightstand and 1 used protection on the bed. That explained why she had been doing so much laundry and chores lately, to clean up the evidence of her affair while I was at work. His shirt and pants were also scattered on the floor. My past anger issues came rushing back with full force. I was filled with rage and completely lost control. I immediately grabbed the guy out of bed and started slapping him in the face. My wife was screaming, trying to stop me, begging me. After slapping him all the way out of my front door, I turned to my wife and told her to pack her things and move out before I returned from work. As I mentioned earlier, I've had anger problems in the past, and the way I handle it is by avoiding situations because if I had stayed in the house for a few more seconds, I might have done something even worse. I got into my car and drove off aimlessly. I just knew I needed to create some distance from my unfaithful wife. My phone started buzzing like crazy, first with calls from my wife and then from my coworkers. I didn't feel like talking to anyone. Eventually, I parked my car somewhere and cried my eyes out. I called my boss and explained that I had a family emergency, and then I called Cody to tell him what had happened. He was angry with his son and apologized to me. Since I don't have any family nearby, I reached out to my wife's dad because I had a close relationship with them, and I informed them about my wife's actions. Throughout the day, my wife tried to reach me, but I didn't answer. I returned home in the evening when I had calmed down a bit. Cody was in my house when I arrived, and my wife was on the couch, crying and trembling. Her parents had come earlier and taken our kids. When I got home, I still had my work clothes on and looked disheveled. Cody kept apologizing to me, saying he understood how I must be feeling. At that point, I didn't blame Cody's son. I wasn't in a relationship with him. I placed the blame squarely on my wife. I had been crying all day, so I didn't have the strength to engage in conversation. I changed my clothes, took a shower, and popped a sleeping pill. Then I went to my kids' room and crashed on their bed. I know myself well enough to realize that I don't make logical decisions when I'm caught up in an emotional whirlwind. The next day I woke up with a clear mind, but a heavy sense of sadness and shame engulfed me. It felt like a part of me had passed. I didn't say a word to my unfaithful wife, and she knew better than to approach me. She hadn't gotten any sleep either, and was still sitting in the living room. During my work hours, I began searching for a divorce lawyer. I knew that getting a divorce would cost me almost half of my assets, and I'd have to pay alimony since my soon-to-be ex-wife had been unemployed for over 10 years. Unfortunately, infidelity doesn't have much impact on divorce settlements in my state. I managed to schedule an appointment with a divorce lawyer for 2 days later. We agreed that my wife would move in with her parents until she figured out her living arrangements. It was for the best that she moved out. As for Cody's son, Cody said he kicked him out of the house, or at least that's what he told me. But I have a suspicion that he might be staying with his mom. I'm just 35 years old making a good income. And a few months ago, I thought my family was perfect. I had 3 beautiful kids, a wife I believed was loyal, 2 rental properties, and our own home. I had plans to build wealth and enjoy life with my kids and loving wife. But now, after the divorce, my children's lives are going to be disrupted. I have to divide my assets and end up like Cody, struggling. Her excuse for cheating is that she felt sorry for Cody's son, and they became close. He started complimenting her, and that's how it all began. Turns out, she had been having an affair with Cody's son for nearly 7 months. We're still working through the details of the divorce settlement with our lawyers, and to make matters worse, I have to pay for her lawyer's fees too. So yeah, if my toilet hadn't been clogged, I probably wouldn't have discovered that my wife had been cheating on me and denying me closeness because she was sleeping with a 19-year-old neighbor's son. Second story. This is going to be a long story. My wife and I were married for 21 years. I thought our marriage was like a miracle because we hardly argued, and we always seemed to be best friends, you know? Well, on our daughter's 15th birthday, she received a 23andMe kit as a gift from a friend. And guess what? It turned out we weren't biologically related. We all did the swab test, including me, her mother, and her 14-year-old brother. Only her brother and I seemed to have a biological connection. So, I decided to do a paternity test afterward, and shockingly, she wasn't my own child. My ex-wife cried and begged me to listen to her side of the story, but I just became numb to her words. It would be one thing if my wife had cheated on me, but discovering that my precious daughter isn't even biologically related to me was devastating. Don't get me wrong, I love my daughter with all my heart. She's still my daughter no matter what. But what scares me the most is how vindictive I feel lately. I've never been like this before, and I know it's just my anger talking, but I want her to suffer so badly. The kids absolutely hate her, which fuels that desire in me to some extent. However, deep down, I know she's still their mother, and I don't really want them to hate her. Even her own parents and siblings are shocked and disgusted by her actions. Her sister hasn't spoken to her in months. We all grew up together, so it hit everyone hard. I have to admit, it feels good to see her isolated like that, but at the same time, it scares me because I don't actually want her life to fall apart. But whenever I learn that something is going wrong for her, I can't help but feel a strange sense of happiness. Right now, both children are living with me because they don't have a positive opinion of their mother. I'm considering talking to them about the idea of reaching out to her and having a conversation, but for now, they refuse to do so. The part that truly breaks my heart is seeing my daughter overcompensating in her role as a daughter. She makes sure to express her love for me and tries to be the perfect daughter in every way, but I can sense that it's because she knows she isn't biologically related to me, and she desperately wants me to understand how much she appreciates me. Tonight, I'm actually planning to talk to her about it and let her know that she doesn't have to act differently. Just to clarify, we did have a conversation about it, and it was a difficult one. I didn't mention that part earlier because it really upsets me to talk about it, and it makes me feel angry. Both my daughter and I are in therapy. I'm following the advice of my therapist and the suggestions from the people who commented on my previous post. I won't pressure my kids to talk to their mother. They're old enough to understand how serious the situation is, and they have their own feelings about it. They'll need time to process their emotions and deal with the situation in their own way, with my support, of course. My daughter's pain seems to have eased a bit. I've reassured her that my love for her will never change and that she'll always be my daughter. Her pain now revolves around trust issues and the trauma of our family breaking apart. She's also told me that she feels like it's all her fault, that if she hadn't brought the kit home, our family would still be together. I hugged her tightly and made sure she knew that none of this was her fault. I reminded her that she was just trying to do something fun with the family, and she couldn't have known what would happen. She should never blame herself for any of it. I had one conversation with my soon-to-be ex-wife, and she begged and pleaded for my forgiveness, promising to cherish me for the rest of her life. She called her actions stupid and meaningless, expressing 100% regret. She also believed that our love could withstand it. But I told her that if our love was truly strong, she wouldn't have sought comfort in someone else. Right now, she's staying with her parents. I've been in touch with her sister, who informed me that she's feeling extremely low and even borderline ending life. They're trying to get her help, but she's refusing because all she wants is to see me and the children. That's why I've decided to wait before serving her with the divorce papers. I don't want to add more to her mental health struggles. I've mentioned the idea of talking to her with our son and daughter, but they strongly refused. I respect their wishes and will give them the time they need to cope. I can't shake off this nagging feeling that she doesn't actually care about how any of us feel. It seems like she only cares about losing her picture-perfect family and the comfortable life we had, and she blames herself for it. I have no desire to try and fix the relationship or move forward at this point. That's all I have to share for now. My daughter is doing much better now. Surprisingly, our relationship has actually become stronger since this whole situation unfolded. It's not just an act. We spend more time together and have deep conversations from the heart. She went to her maternal grandparents' house to see her mother. From what I heard, she mostly interacted with her grandparents and didn't say much to her mom. As for my son, he's also doing fine. His experience is different from my daughter's because he's actually my biological child. He's still angry at his mom for betraying me, but he's starting to come around and has been talking to her more during their visits. He's still cautious because he's a protective little brother and hates seeing his sister in pain. I really admire him for being there for her, talking to her, taking walks together, and never giving up on her. I told him how proud I am of him for standing by her side. I've also made an effort to talk to him about his own feelings because I realized that during all of this, I may have unintentionally overlooked him since he's my biological child. But he's going through his own challenges too, and now we have many conversations together. He's also in individual counseling to help him navigate through this. Regarding my wife, I attempted marriage counseling to see if there was any hope left. I tried to believe her when she claimed it was her only affair and that she didn't know she was carrying the other person's child, but it didn't work out. I couldn't even look at her or talk to her during the counseling sessions, and when I did say something, it was only about how much it hurt me. She would cry and beg on her knees, but it didn't change anything. I couldn't trust that she hadn't cheated again, and I felt like she knew the child wasn't mine, but chose me because it was the safer option. I had been deceived and played for a fool, and I'm done with it. I served her divorce papers at her parents' house, and she went into a hysterical fit, screaming at the top of her lungs on the floor. I couldn't understand her words, but I just felt numb to it. Her mother tried to plead with me to forgive her, but her father silently walked me to the front and without saying a word, gave me a firm handshake and a nod that conveyed complete understanding. We got in touch with my daughter's biological father and obtained his medical information. However, she expressed that she doesn't want anything to do with him because she already has a dad, me. I'm not going to try to convince her otherwise, although I do worry that one day she might want to reach out to him and develop a close bond, which could make me fade into the background. But I try to push that fear aside and only address it during individual counseling. That's the current situation we're in. My kids and I are doing our best to keep going. This will probably be the final update, unless something major happens, but I highly doubt it. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me and kept checking in on me. I truly appreciate all the help and advice.